Alrighty, folks, welcome back to Technical Knockout, the MMA podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Today I have a very special piece for you. I've been working on it for a while now. I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I finally have all the pieces together, and I'm happy to give to you a career retrospective on Dominick Cruz, the bantamweight legend, arguably the bantamweight GOAT, in my opinion. I think a lot of people hold that opinion. But regardless of anything, an absolute legend of the sport. Very fun career and style to break down and learn from. So thank you very much for tuning in. This is Resilience, the Dominick Cruz retrospective. So Dominick Cruz was the first UFC bantamweight champion. It's 135, of course, as I'm sure you guys know. And he's also the first two-time bantamweight champion, having getting his belt back against TJ Dillashaw in 2016. He had 5 title defenses and 7 title victories altogether. And when you're discussing the great MMA career of bantamweight legend Dominick Cruz, a few major cornerstones need to be covered. Primarily his unique style and footwork and approach, including the use of trash talk and his angles, movement, footwork. His championship history, including the feud he had with Team Alpha Male. His series of injuries, and the overall theme of resilience and determination that led him to his storied career. Starting off with his unique style and approach, Cruz has an entirely unique style to any MMA fighter. He utilizes a defense-first approach, relying on feints and footwork to draw out the opponent's attack and ultimately outpoint and exhaust them. He does not want to fight for a finish, he wants to fight for a victory. He wants to hit you and not get hit in return. Utilizing V-steps, weaves, and feints, Cruz weaves a web of actions to draw out his opponent's reactions and capitalize on them. He developed this game based entirely on MMA at the time, and it's a style that would really only work in MMA. In Muay Thai, or kickboxing, or boxing, or wrestling, or any other individual martial art, Cruz's style will leave a lot of room open for answers from his opponents. But when he can mix every discipline together, it's incredibly hard to beat. There are 3 fighters that Cruz's style can be loosely related to. Willie Pep is probably the most prominent example. He's an old boxer who, retired 60 years before Dominick Cruz made his debut. Muhammad Ali would be the other example, who, as you all know, is one of the greatest, if not the greatest boxer of all time. And the last one would be TJ Dillashaw, who came out after Cruz and was definitely influenced by Cruz's style, as you can see in his movements and patterns, and Cruz actually has a victory over him. So it's really not a style that you come across every day. Particularly, Cruz was influenced by Ali's use of the dart punch and his feints and his weaves, and he was influenced by Willie Pep's use of the V-step and stance switching. The wrinkle that Cruz would be able to add to those inspiration styles was the threat of a takedown. Given that he was in MMA, he had every tool at his disposal, including kicks and takedowns, and obviously Willie Pep and Muhammad Ali didn't have those tools, or the option to use those tools. So Cruz just tacked on more and more nuance to their games. He was a standout wrestler in high school, but unfortunately could not wrestle in college due to injuries, which is a theme that we will see throughout his career. Instead, he ended up coaching the high school team, and that ended up being the fuel for him to pursue MMA as a career. When asked about how he got into MMA in the first place, he said, "I was coaching the high school wrestling team right after graduating, and it was the only time I felt free or happy. It was when I was in the gym training or coaching. I told my mom I wanted to be a professional fighter, and she said, okay, well, you don't need to go to school or college to be successful. You just need to follow your heart. So go for it." Cruz and his mother had a very close relationship. Cruz has referred to himself as a mama's boy on more than one occasion. And he often credits her with his mindset, the mindset that would bring him to championships and great, glory in the MMA sphere. He told the story on the Joe Rogan podcast about how his mother would always make sure he could never leave any excuses. Like, she wouldn't allow him to make any excuses. One time he caught her stealing, or she caught him stealing, I should say, and she made him bring back the thing that he stole. It was like some toy or something from a store, and he ended up having to like sweep and mop the floor as payment for the toy, So, he grew up in a house where he could never, make excuses or run away from things. And I think that really led to him being a very strong-willed and resilient individual, as we'll see as the story unfolds. So, breaking down Cruz's style further, particularly his footwork. By now, you've heard me mention Dominick Cruz's elusive footwork and things like the V-step, weaves, feints, or stance switches. Let's dissect these terms and explain how Cruz used them and where he used them and why. So, feints being the first step. This is the cornerstone of Dominick Cruz's style. Feints are one of the most underutilized tools in MMA, especially at that time, but even still today. Some great MMA fighters who use feints well are George St. Pierre, Alexander Volkanovski, Israel Adesanya, and of course, as we mentioned multiple times now, Dominick Cruz. A feint is when you show a technique but don't commit to it, to draw out a reaction from your opponent. A classic example in MMA would be feinting the takedown to set up the overhand right. The wrestler special, if you will. Cruz is constantly fading and setting up traps for his opponents to fall in. The takedown feint into the overhand is one that definitely was in Cruz's repertoire, but he also faked the takedown or duck to land leg kicks or even a long jab. The main goal of the feint is to make your opponent overreact to something, both giving you an opening and exhausting your opponent's mental faculties with information. If you start flinching and biting on Cruz's feints, you're going to have a long night ahead for you. GSP famously used feints to overstimulate BJ Penn's reaction timing and exhaust him in their second fight, leading the welterweight champion to landing easy jabs and takedowns on the lightweight champion. Cruz would feint an over-exaggerated leg kick until his opponent had to either A, move out of the way, exhausting him, or B, straighten up and pull his legs, leaving him open for the takedown, or C, pull back his foot to check and leave himself off balance for a takedown or a punch. Cruz would constantly set these kind of traps and force his opponent to move in a certain direction or frustrate them to the point of exhaustion. Weaves. Duck, dip, dive, dodge, and weave. Weaving is when you use head movement to circle and dodge your opponent's punches. When boxers go like this, this would be slipping, going side to side. Weave has a little bit more circular movement, a little more front and back. There's a lot more ways you can move when you weave. It's another defensive tool adopted from boxing. Muhammad Ali used feints into weaves to draw out his opponent's attack and be in position to counter. He would also famously use them against George Foreman against the ropes to exhaust the powerful infighter. Cruz would integrate the weaves into his feints as well, setting up leg kicks and even takedowns at times. He would also use over-exaggerated weaves to switch stances, or feint as mentioned before. Stance switches. To fight out of both stances, southpaw and orthodox, is to switch stances. This means putting either your left foot forward or your right foot forward. And it may sound simple, but this switch can change a lot of factors in the fight, both for striking and grappling. The most prominent example, or the most common example, would be switching to southpaw to open up the left side, open side body kick on the liver of an orthodox fighter. That's a good enough reason to switch stance, but there's plenty of other reasons to switch otherwise. Cruz would use stance switches mid-combination to keep his opponents guessing, thinking, and missing. It would also give Cruz the chance to spot different openings based on the stance he was using. So, for example, a leg kick may be open from the orthodox stance, or a head kick may be open from the southpaw stance. It all depends on your athlete's natural gifts and their preferences. The crouch. The crouch, besides a way to humiliate opponents in Halo or Call of Duty, is another evasive movement from boxing. In effect, you're leaning forward at the hip to make yourself appear closer than you really are. Then when your opponent commits to something, you have options to evade. You can either lean back, roll or weave, or just step backwards completely. Oftentimes the crouch is used to draw out a counterpunching opportunity. Famously utilized by Roe Jones Jr., but the crouch was also a major component of both Muhammad Ali and Willie Pep's defensive styles. Dominick Cruz would adapt this boxing maneuver to MMA, with the addition of a takedown threat, of course. And with Dominick Cruz's favorite takedowns being the double leg and the knee tap, both of which you have to, level change to get to. The crouch is essentially a halfway point and a level change, so he would use that to set up those takedowns and his punches and his kicks. The V-step. Another footwork drill and move that serves to give the fighter a clear angle on his opponent and give the opponent less to hit. It's essentially moving in on a straight line and then retreating on an angle. Cruz would use this movement and other evasive techniques in tandem with his feints and stance switches to make him very hard to get a read on. The objective of the V-step is to hit and not get hit. In return, a simple premise that's imperative in boxing. He would pivot off the V-step to further distance himself after landing as well. It's just another wrinkle in his game there. The V-step was commonly used by guys like Willie Pep, Muhammad Ali, and now in MMA we see Ilia Topuria utilize it a ton, especially in that fight with Josh Emmett. The dart. An Eddie Alvarez staple, the dart punch is one that Dominick Cruz employs often. The dart punch is an offensive maneuver that holds the same objective as the V-step, hit and don't be there to get hit back. The dart is unique, though, in that it involves a shift in stance as well. The dart punch, or just dart, is when a fighter lunges in with their rear hand and immediately sidesteps off to switch stance and evade the opponent's counter. It's an effective point-scoring technique that, if used correctly, will land on your opponent and give you a strong angle on them that will leave them unable to return. Muhammad Ali also used the dart to open a new angle on his opponent, opening up for another right hand, where Cruz would take this a step further, using the dart to get an angle on a takedown. Cruz would use the dart, V-step, pivots, feints, and stance switches all in tandem to score on opponents and not allow them to return the favor. When asked about his footwork and style, Cruz said, "I developed it based on trying not to get hit. When I started in the sport, the lowest weight class was 155, and I had to fight much bigger guys. And in order to stay defensive and not get knocked out, I had to put myself in this gray area, where even if you do hit me, it's limited power, and I can still hit you more than you hit me." Cruz would integrate these footwork tools and movements into his takedown game, as I mentioned, with his favorite takedowns being the double leg and knee tap. Both of those takedowns can be set up from the crouch, weaves, or even from the dart. Cruz sewed together this style to always put himself in position to counter with a takedown as well as a strike. Oftentimes when you see Cruz go for these takedowns, they look almost effortless. They happen very quickly, and it's because he's always in the right position to set them up. When he goes for them, he's never desperately going for them. He only does it when it's already available. Cruz's trash talk. Dominick Cruz's style in the cage largely served to frustrate and overwhelm his opponents, leading them to get emotional and miss their attacks trying to take his head off. This philosophy was also a big part of his pre-fight trash talk. Often, in press conferences or other face-to-face interactions, Cruz's sharp tongue and wit would goad his opponents into frustration and anger, which would only further play into Cruz's defensive style when the cage doors locked. Some opponents would simply not engage in this facet of the game with Cruz, Uriah Faber probably being the best example. To Faber's credit, he might have had a leg up on other competitors because he already had a win and finish over Cruz, which probably kept him confident. The best example of Cruz's trash talk working would have to be against TJ Dillashaw. As previously mentioned, Cruz won the belt back from TJ after his absence from injury. He also employed a unique style, arguably influenced by Cruz's movements and footwork, but the difference was TJ's footwork was tailored to be more offensive, where Cruz's was tailored to be more defensive. In reality, these two are the best and smartest bantamweights of all time at this point. But if you'd only seen the trash talk, you'd think that TJ was some idiot meathead and Cruz was a genius. Cruz talked circles around TJ and frustrated the hell out of him. I have to imagine that this played into the dynamic of the fight as well, as TJ was really trying to take Cruz's head off with every kick and punch he threw. He didn't take time to really set up his strikes or, land volume until the latter half of the fight, and by that point it was too little too late. Cruz's style of trash talk and fighting style would all serve to aggravate and annoy his opponents, leading them to take unnecessary risks and put themselves into Cruz's strengths. It was a genius way of approaching every angle of the sport, and can't be remiss when discussing Dominick's unique approach to MMA. Here's a little compilation of some trash talk that Cruz had throughout his career, some of his best moments in my opinion.
He's able to mix things up because he's facing stationary targets. So he's been able to look a lot better than he really is.
He's just a talker, man. He's just going to try to overanalyze this because I don't need to.
Why?
Because I don't want to.
I think you're scared to talk because you don't want to say what you're going to do because you're scared to eat your words.
All right, man.
So say
Fair
it.
enough.
Tell me.
I don't need to.
I'll do it right here. I'm going to beat you because I'm better than you.
I already told you to knock your ass out.
How?
Don't worry about how I'm going to knock you out. I'm going to do it.
You're going to knock me out. That's how you're going to beat me? Nobody even hits me.
You're going to get hit.
How are you going to hit me?
You got some holes in your game, man.
That's all you got to say? You got no reasoning. You got no backup. You got holes in your game and I hit harder than you. Those are both opinions. There's no facts behind it. What's the facts you have stating why you
matter?
They do matter.
No, they don't.
You're going to see on that night,
dude.
but the point is I have faced people similar to your style and similar to your skeleton. People that switch stance, people that are faster than you, people that mix takedowns in.
All right, man, I'm done talking to you.
You can't be done talking to me. You're right here facing me, dummy. You got to talk to me. You have no choice. You got nowhere to go. Keep talking. I'm better than you because I've beaten people that are better than you. I'm better than you. I expect him to say these things. I'm fighting him. Why would he say nice things about me? He's not going to compliment me.
I could say nice things about you, but I have nothing nice to say. I think you're a dork.
That's fine. I expect you to say that. I expected it when we came in here. I also expect you to say, I'm going to break your jaw. You don't hit hard. You can't take me down.
You can't.
You're gonna knock. I'm going to knock you out because I knock everybody out. I could say verbatim what you're going to say before these interviews because you're a meathead.
You study me. Because you study me.
Because you're a meathead.
Team Alpha Male versus Dominick Cruz. Team Alpha Male is an MMA team coming out of California and Sacramento that featured a lot of lower weight class fighters. Some notable fighters being Uriah Faber as the head of the team, Chad Mendes, Joseph Benavidez, TJ Dillashaw, Cody Garbrandt, and countless other small fighters who have been there and trained there over the years. Dominick Cruz fought the Team Alpha Male bantamweights for about 30 rounds over the course of his career, including Uriah Faber 3 times, Joseph Benavidez twice, TJ Dillashaw, and Cody Garbrandt all in 5-round title fights, as well as Charlie Valencia and Scott Jorgensen, who had spent some time at Team Alpha Male before fighting Cruz. Cruz was undefeated against the team up until his title defense against Cody Garbrandt. By that time, Cruz had been through a litany of injuries, and Alpha Male had a chance to game plan against him multiple times, and it finally caught up with Cruz losing his belt to Cody Garbrandt in his last fight as a champion. But besides that Cody fight, Cruz has done very well against Team Alpha Male, notably beating Uriah Faber twice, Benavidez twice, and TJ Dillashaw. Cruz's record against Team Alpha Male fighters in title fights was 5-1 at the end of his career. If you have any reservations about Team Alpha Male's preparation for Cruz, please search up the video of Justin Buchholz, Team Alpha Male's head coach, mimicking Dominick Cruz's movements. You can tell from how accurate he is that they have spent a lot of time studying Dominick Cruz and trying to find answers for his style. It's a testament to Cruz's greatness that he was able to turn back so many Alpha Male fighters, considering they were the most prominent and well-known gym for any fighter below 155 at that time. Now let's look at some notable fights for Cruz. With such a long and storied career, it'd be impossible to cover every fight from Dominick's career, but there's a few notable fights that I want to cover that I feel help illustrate Cruz's unique style and implementations in the cage. For the sake of brevity, we're going to look at 3 of Cruz's most notable fights. The second Faber fight, which was his first UFC title defense and his first fight in the UFC octagon. The TJ Dillashaw fight, where he regained the belt after years of injuries and surgeries, and the Cody Garbrandt fight, where he lost his belt. Let's start with the Faber 2. Faber 2, Revenge. Going into the first bantamweight title fight in the UFC octagon and his first defense, Dominick Cruz drew divisional rival and Team Alpha Male leader/coach Uriah Faber. This was a rematch, as Faber was Cruz's only loss up to this point. He was submitted by Faber almost immediately in their first fight, catching Cruz in a guillotine choke on Cruz's first takedown attempt 1 minute into their fight at featherweight. This would wind up being Cruz's only loss for the next 9 years, until he faced Cody Garbrandt, but we'll get to that later. The stage was set for an exciting rematch between the 2 best bantamweights in the world that the world had seen at this point, and the fight did not disappoint. Round 1. First round starts with a clean dart punch from Dominick, and the 2 go back and forth for most of the round. It's clear that both men have studied the other very well, as Faber does his best to remain in his stance and not overextend, and Cruz is well prepared for Faber's overhand right, his best punch. Faber lands a few solid leg kicks and a big right hand that forces Dominick to clinch, where both fighters land some good shots. The round ends with Cruz landing more strikes, but Faber landing the cleaner, more effective punches, and winning the round on 2 judges' scorecards. I scored that round for Faber as well. Round 2 was a much better round for Cruz. Dominick used his patterns of footwork and movement to evade almost every strike from Faber in this round. Defending both takedown attempts from Faber, Cruz was only caught in the clinch with a couple of strikes off of failed takedown attempts and a couple of right hands, one of which looked like a knockdown but simply caught Cruz off balance. For large parts of the round, Cruz would do his usual hit and not get hit back routine, making Faber whiff and landing when he could. He ends the round with a takedown and a clean combination that stamps a dominant round 2 for the champion. So far I have it 1-1. Round 3, a more active round from Faber, but still one in which Cruz outlands and outmaneuvers the challenger. Faber does a much better job this round than the last to defend the takedowns of Cruz, and even lands a takedown of his own. However, Cruz reverses position and eventually gets back up to his feet and gives the challenger a combination for his troubles. Faber would do a much better job this round of catching Cruz mid-slip, but Cruz would ultimately land the more effective punches and be the busier fighter, winning a close but clear round 3. 2-1 Cruz. Round 4. Going into round 4, all 3 judges had Cruz up. 2 of them had him 2-1, and 1 of them had him 3-0. Essentially, Faber would need to win the last 2 rounds in order to win the fight. And to his credit, this was the best round of the fight for him. This round would see Faber land at a much higher percentage and more often than any other round he's had against Cruz across their 3 fights. But it was still only enough to win the round on 1 judge's scorecard. Faber would land a clean right straight while Dom was off balance, which looked and felt like a knockdown despite official stats not recognizing it as such, and Cruz would immediately go for a takedown, which Faber would defend well. Cruz would then start to show signs of exhaustion here, as Faber picked up the pace and maintained composure. Cruz would try to end the round with a takedown, but Faber defended it well and pushed Dom back to the fence to end the round in a good position. A close round here that Faber edged in my opinion, although 2 judges gave it to Dominick. Round 5. With the fight likely being 2-2, Both men need to push hard here for a final claim at the belt. Cruz starts the round hot, opening with a flying knee that grazes Faber's chin and stumbles him back to the fence. And Faber returns with a takedown attempt, which Cruz stuffs and returns with his own takedown attempt, and he lands it. The two trade some punches, and Cruz gets the better of the exchanges throughout the round. Faber looks exhausted in this round, and Cruz seemingly got a second wind here. Cruz lands another takedown towards the end of the round, and ends the fight with a solid combination that backs Faber up and puts a stamp on his first title defenses. I scored the fight 48-47 for Cruz, but 49-46 wouldn't make me upset either, and all three judges would score the fight differently, as it was really competitive, but all three saw it for the champion, and Cruz defended his belt for the first time. Scorecards were 50-45, 49-46, and 48-47, all for Dominick Cruz. UFC 132 would be capstoned by Faber and Cruz's classic rematch, in which Cruz avenged his lone loss. Both men put on a great show, and more importantly, they put the MMA world on notice that the bantamweight division was super exciting, and it was here to stay. The TJ Dillashaw fight returned to the top. Dominick Cruz would go on to notch another title defense against future flyweight GOAT and MMA legend Demetrius Johnson. You want to talk about a win aging well. And then he would be forced to vacate the belt after 3 years of injuries. In his absence, Renan Barão would win and defend the vacant belt. He would then lose it to TJ Dillashaw, the newest product from Team Alpha Male, and the first to win UFC gold for them. He would defend it twice while Cruz would heal from injuries, once against Barão in the rematch, and another against a short-notice Joe Soto. He knocked out both of those guys. In this time frame, Cruz would finally come back in 2014 and fight number 5 Takeya Mizugaki, and he would run through him. Putting on the best performance of his career, Cruz TKO'd the Japanese standout in 1 minute flat. This comeback fight put Cruz right back in the title picture, and he would face TJ Dillashaw for the bantamweight belt in January 2016 after healing up from some injuries in training. This would be Cruz's first title fight in 5 years, and only his second fight in that same time. The narrative going in was that TJ was a more aggressive, more powerful version of the same fleet-footed approach that Cruz was known for, and where Cruz was more defensive, TJ was offensive. And the stage was set for a classic title fight between two of the most talented bantamweights to ever grace the octagon. Round 1. Both fighters come out hot with a sequence of stance switches and angle changes, as if to tell the other, "What's up, bro? Now you're fighting somebody who can also move." TJ blasts a right head kick, which clearly was a read his team made for this fight, but Cruz narrowly avoids it. Cruz lands a few combos while evading, and TJ throws another head kick, which Cruz catches and turns into a takedown. TJ pops up and attempts a 1-2 on the break, clearly something he picked up from Faber's fights with Cruz. TJ attempts a takedown, which Cruz stuffs and circles out of. The two trade punches, Cruz lands the better shots, and they dance around, with TJ landing a clean punch and whiffing on a few more, and Cruz landing some leg kicks and catching TJ's head kick and turning it into a takedown. TJ defends the takedown well this time, and Cruz lands a few more glancing blows when TJ attempts a takedown, which Cruz stuffs, and they end the round against the cage. Round 1 is super close, but I felt that Cruz edged it with the more effective grappling and more accurate strikes. 2 out of 3 judges would give the round to TJ. Round 2. Round 2 picked up right where the last round left off, with both fighters showcasing high-level movement and footwork to evade the other's strikes. TJ would whiff on a kick, and Cruz would land a combo and circle out. Cruz lands a couple of body hooks in a row, first time we see him target the body in this fight. The two trade jabs and slips. When TJ opens up for more than that, Cruz pivots and runs TJ into the fence. They reset, and TJ throws a big head kick, which he slips, and as Cruz regains the center of the cage. TJ throws 2 more naked head kicks, and Dominick lands a stiff jab. The two trade footwork patterns again and stance switches, and TJ lands his best punch of the round, a hook as Cruz is slipping away. He follows this up with a leg kick, which lands easily. He throws another hook and lands another leg kick, finding a home for that technique now. Cruz lands a blitzing combo to return, and TJ answers with a head kick at the end of his own combo. The head kick is blocked, but lands mostly anyway. Finally finding a partial home for the head kick he'd been whiffing on all night. TJ is now gaining momentum, and Dominick lands 2 shifting hooks to swing back some momentum his way. TJ uses a false entry and angle switch to try to enter the pocket, but Cruz intercepts him with a beautifully timed double leg. And TJ, who's visibly angry, kicks Cruz off and tries to land a combo to pay it back, but Cruz immediately goes back to the takedown and gets it. TJ takes a breath on the ground and now works his way back up a little bit more intelligently. Cruz lands a hook on the get-up, and the two dance for the last 45 seconds or so, with Cruz landing some leg kicks and TJ landing a hook. A close round, but Cruz edged it with the takedowns in my opinion, and this is the only round that all 3 judges would score in unison, or they all agreed upon, and they all scored it for Dominick, 10-9. Round 3. The third round starts with more of the same, TJ blasting a head kick and Cruz circling and popping jabs from both stances. TJ pushes forward with a shifting combo that Cruz counters well with hooks on the back foot, and they trade leg kicks. When Cruz lands, though, TJ grabs it to try a takedown, but Cruz defends it well. The two dance around the cage for a minute or so, no one landing clean until TJ lands a solid hook. Cruz lands a few jabs and evades the follow-up shots from TJ. Then TJ lands 2 leg kicks in a row, similar to the last round. He goes for a third, but Cruz drives through it and gets a takedown. TJ scrambles. Dominick threatens a Darce choke here, but TJ rolls out of it, and they return to the feet. Dom lands a stiff jab as TJ shifts into range. TJ takes a deep breath, showing a combination of both exhaustion and frustration. Cruz backs him up to the fence and lands the cleanest combo of the fight. 2 hooks in a row, dodges TJ's hook back, and lands an uppercut to land 2 more hooks and circle out when TJ returns. It's a beautiful exchange in my opinion, and it does enough to steal the round for Dominick. TJ tries to get it back with some huge hooks and a head kick, which Dominick evades all of. TJ goes for a takedown on a last-ditch effort to steal the round, but Dom defends it and lands a hook over the top that sends an off-balance TJ to the canvas, further cementing the third round for the challenger. 2 out of 3 judges would give this round to Cruz. I scored it for him as well, bringing the fight to 3-0 for Cruz in 3 very competitive rounds, but rounds that I felt Cruz edged. Round 4. Although Dominick is adamant that ring rust isn't real, you can see him start to fatigue in these last 2 rounds, and I'd have to imagine that it's from the time off more than anything else. Tack on that TJ would later test positive for EPO, a cardio-enhancing drug. I give Cruz a little bit of a pass for slowing down in these last 2 rounds. TJ opens up with more leg kicks this round, building on the success he found in the last couple of rounds. He lands a few really solid ones, and he does a much better job in this round of throwing when Cruz is planted the few times that Cruz does plant. Cruz goes for a takedown, but TJ defends it well and gets back to the feet, and Cruz's movement is certainly slower this round, while TJ takes advantage of that by shooting hard for a bodylock takedown towards the end of the round. Cruz attempts a Granby roll to escape, but it fails and allows TJ to secure position for a few seconds. Dominick works back up to the cage, and TJ gives him a few hard knees to the thigh for his troubles. And while it's not a devastating technique, it's certainly a very smart one to score points and further slow down Cruz's movement. TJ defends a takedown from Cruz and feeds him a knee in a 2-piece combo as he stands up, and you can feel the confidence radiating from Dillashaw at this point, as the momentum of the fight had clearly shifted. TJ punctuates the round with a clean check hook and puts a stamp on the best round of the fight for him so far. 2 out of 3 judges would give TJ this 4th round. Round 5. TJ opens up with a couple of leg kicks. Dominick circles away from them. Dillashaw lands a body kick and then a huge hook. Cruz leans directly into a head kick, which was the cleanest shot of the fight for TJ to this point. Cruz pushes forward with a few punches but lands nothing. The momentum is now completely on the side of the champion. TJ lands a clean body kick and later a very solid leg kick that hurts Cruz. Cruz hops gingerly on his hurt left leg, but TJ powers through and continues to walk down the challenger. Cruz, bloodied and limping, evades what he can from the surging champion before charging himself forward in a big swinging hook combo that mostly lands. TJ responds with another huge leg kick, and Cruz lands a right straight in the takedown, and a straight right in the exchange, and fails the takedown. The two trade a few punches, each landing some. The bell rings and they hug, squashing any beef there may have been before the fight. TJ clearly wins round 5 in my opinion and ends the fight very strong, with 2 out of 3 judges giving that round to TJ. Cruz would win this fight by split decision. One judge had TJ up 4-1, one judge had Cruz up 4-1, and the other had Cruz up 3-2. I agree with this latter score, as I don't think any guy won 4 rounds. However, rounds 1, 3, and 5 are all very close, so I'm not shocked at the contention here. An incredible back-and-forth technical fight where both fighters showcased what made them really special. Incredible fight, incredibly competitive, and very high-level technique throughout. You can't underrate the heart that it takes for Cruz to come back from all the injuries and surgeries he went through to win back the belt and be so competitive and, closely contested with a great champion like TJ, who at the time really looked like the future of the sport. It takes so much to win a UFC championship in the first place. The amount of heart and resilience it takes to win it twice is impossible to state. Cruz in this fight was a perfect example of resilience and determination, in my opinion, and he gets the belt back after a long, long time away from it. Cody Garbrandt. The puzzle gets solved. After winning the belt back by narrowly beating TJ Dillashaw in January 2016, Cruz would defend it decisively against longtime rival Uriah Faber in June at UFC 199. After getting the 50-45 and finishing the trilogy 2-1, Cruz would put the rivalry behind him. Faber, in his post-fight speech of his last run at UFC championship, would shout out a young gunner at Team Alpha Male, Cody Garbrandt. Cody would then go on to finish Takeya Mizugaki in less than a minute in August at UFC 202. He would call out Cruz in the post-fight speech, and the table was set for Cruz versus Garbrandt at UFC 207 in December. The Garbrandt fight would mark the 5th time Dominick Cruz would fight a Team Alpha Male fighter for the title, and Cody would go on to have pulled lessons from every previous attempt from the team, finally realizing a victory for the team versus Cruz. More importantly, he'd be the first person to effectively solve the puzzle of Dominick Cruz's style, as the only loss he had before this was that quick submission loss to Uriah Faber when he was very green in the sport. Round 1. Cody opens with a fast 1-2-3 and then a leg kick. He mocks Cruz's movement. Then Cruz lands a few right hands and leg kicks. Then Cody starts landing clean. Cruz eats everything and almost gets caught in a corner, but escapes. Cody landed a hard body shot and a leg kick and pointed both out to Cruz. He shows great head movement while Cruz shoots, and Cody rides the momentum to reverse it and stand back up. They trade a bit, and Cruz wins an exchange, but Cody lands his own takedown, where Cruz attempts a reversal, but Cody stays on top. They get up, and the round is over. 10-9 Cody. It is clear that Cody has learned from his mentors and does not chase Cruz around blindly. Judges give the round to Cruz, though, 2-1. In my opinion, Cody won this round, but the judges gave it to Cruz for majority of it. Round 2. Cody opens the round with a very quick switch head kick. Cruz blocks it, but it puts him on notice. Cody lands a beautiful combo, and then Cruz returns with the hard punch that stuns Cody. The two go back and forth, and after a few whips from both fighters, Cody lands a really cute cartwheel kick. Both men are showing great head movement and understanding of each other's styles. Cody lands a good 3-punch combo and goes to the center and points to it. Cody lands a nice body kick and a nice combination, and it's a super close round where Cruz lands the last exchange. It's a high-level fight for sure. I personally scored this round 10-9 for Cruz, but it could go either way. The judges gave it to Cruz 2-1. So far, the scores are 19-19, 19-19, and 20-18, with the only judge who did not have it as a draw at this point scoring it for Cruz. Round 3. Cody comes out hot and cuts Cruz over the left eye. It was a clash of heads, but Cody was landing before the clash. Cody showed great head movement and hurts Cruz before taunting him. He's doing to Cruz what Cruz said he'd do to him. Cruz lands a clean hook after a minute of setting it up, and then Cody answers with a cracking 3-4 combo. They go to the center, and Cody knocks down Cruz with a huge combination, dances around Cruz's returns, and lands more clean combos. He stays composed, and they go at it tit for tat for the last minute, where Cody dips a lot of Cruz's combos, and it's clear he knows what Cruz's patterns are. This round is scored 10-9 for Cody on all the scorecards, and the first round that all three judges agreed upon. Scorecards are now 29-28, 29-28, and 28-29 for Garbrandt. Round 4. Cody counters Cruz early. They open for a long combo, the two of them, and Cody hurts and drops Cruz really badly. The biggest land on either side so far, for sure. Cody points and laughs at Cruz before Cruz springs back up really quickly. Cody lands more shots after a little dancing, but stays very composed. He makes Dom miss a few leg kicks, and then dips a long combo and hits a slick dance move. They circle more. Cody slides back from a head kick, and Cruz lands a good hook, and then Cody drops him again with a huge hook. He stalks him, drops him again, and then drops him a fourth time. The round ends, and it's a huge round for Cody, 10-8 for two judges and 10-9 for the third. The optics of the fight are clear. Cody is bloodying up the champion and dancing while he does it. He's running away with the fight, and it may be too late for Cruz to do anything about it. The judges now have the fight 39-36, 39-36, and 38-38. Round 5. Cody lands a good body kick. Cruz tags him in return. Cody dips a few combos, and Cody stands in the center of the cage and lets Cruz dance around him. He gets hit, and then decides to move a bit more. Cruz attempts a flying knee, and Cody makes fun of him. He goes to a push-up position to taunt. Cody still slides out of the way of shots, but doesn't have the same returns as he did earlier. Cruz simply outworks him here. And although Cody stays defensively responsible, Cruz is pressuring, and Cody responds with a shot and takes Cruz to the cage. He lets him go with a knee for his troubles, and they circle around until the end. After a second or two of an intense stare down, they hug each other while burying the hatchet. You can see the look in Cruz's face here that he knows he just lost, and that Cody's the new champion. The judges gave the last round to Cruz 2-1, and ends the fight 48-46, 48-46, 48-47 for Cody Garbrandt, the new champion. Although he had only won 3 rounds out of the 5, Cody Garbrandt had all the momentum at the end of the fight, and had certainly the bigger moments throughout the fight. And I think that the image in MMA fans' minds at the time was that Cruz got styled on. You know, Cody was taunting the whole time. He dropped the champion. He bloodied him up, and decisively won. Garbrandt would utilize the movement, kicks, and speed that TJ did against Cruz, the successes that TJ had against Cruz. And he also paired that with the hand speed and power punches that Faber had success with against Cruz in their fights. More importantly, he demonstrated a lot more composure and patience than either TJ or Faber did against Cruz, and those patches of skill and technique would culminate together in what would be the best performance of Garbrandt's career, and the first time Cruz would have been exposed in that way. This was only Cruz's second loss, with the first being a very quick guillotine by Faber when Cruz was incredibly green. This was the first time Cruz had been beaten decisively over the course of a fight and picked apart that way. Garbrandt had effectively solved the puzzle, and it would be the last time Cruz was competitive in a title fight. And also the last time Cody was, for that matter. Both men left it all in the cage, but the 5th time was the charm for Team Alpha Male. After the Garbrandt fight, Cruz would have, in my opinion, the best post-fight press conference of all time. Making no excuses or arguments, he owned up to the fact that Cody was incredibly well prepared and beat him fair and square. Cruz would own up to his loss in a very refreshing way that we don't see often in combat sports. It further substantiated his greatness, in my opinion, as to be so honest with yourself and vulnerable in the spotlight takes a lot of courage and resilience.
Obviously, a tough night for you tonight.
What was tough about it?
Walking away with the loss, of course.
Loss is part of life. If you don't have loss, you don't grow. This isn't tough. This is life.
What did you think about your performance tonight? Some people said maybe you weren't quite at 100% tonight.
They're wrong. I was there. That was 100% me. I was healthy. I was everything I've always been in my eyes. I got caught in a couple transitions, and that's how it goes in this game. You're swinging 4-ounce gloves. You get caught sometimes. What else can you really say about that? I got to go back and watch the fight, obviously. But I can't, after feeling it, after getting through it, after seeing the look in his eyes a couple times when I punched him, when I kicked him, when I fought him, I'm not disappointed in myself at all. All I can say is I lost, and I'll take my loss like a man.
Compare that to how Ronda took her loss to Holly Holm, or Conor took his loss to Dustin Poirier in their third fight, and it's night and day. Cruz would then take a substantial period of time off due to injury and healing up from the Cody fight, and he would come back to a title fight against Henry Cejudo. He would get finished after getting his legs kicked to pieces in a stoppage that Cruz would contest. He would then beat decent bantamweights in Casey Kenny and Pedro Munoz in relatively close fights but decisive victories, and ultimately ended his career on a knockout loss to Marlon Chito Vera that could not be protested. He had 3 attempts at a 2+ year return from competition versus a top 5 fighter in the world, Mizugaki from 2011 to 2014, TJ Dillashaw from 2014 to 2016, and Henry Cejudo from 2016 to 2020. Cruz exemplified resilience, coming back from injury time and time again and regaining and defending his championship. When I started writing this retrospective, Dominick Cruz was scheduled to face Rob Font. Unfortunately, Cruz had to pull out and subsequently retire as a result of another series of injuries. Regardless of how his career ended, Dominick Cruz's career and impact on the sport is a story that will be remembered for decades to come. Cruz was a torchbearer for the UFC bantamweight division, a division which is now commonly regarded as one of the best in the sport. Cruz brought an innovative and unique style and approach to MMA and put on some very entertaining and exciting fights along the way. His footwork and movement style was novel when he showed it to the world 15 years ago, and still there are not many, if any, fighters that can move how Cruz did. The litany of injuries, surgeries, and time off he came back from helped to carve an exemplary story of resilience and determination, the likes we rarely see in combat sports and sports altogether. Cruz's story is one that I think will stand the test of time, and when future fans of the sport read about him and watch his fights, I hope they'll appreciate his story and his contributions to the sport. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. I had a lot of fun breaking this fighter down, breaking this career down, and as I mentioned multiple times on this podcast, Dominick Cruz is one of my favorite fighters, and one of the reasons that I really got into the sport when I did. So to break down his career in full like that, or at least his UFC career, brings me great joy. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed the pieces that I put together. I hope you enjoyed the the clips that I've edited and things like that. And yeah, hopefully you guys want to see more of this style of content. Let me know, and I will have to break down which is most fighters. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. And this has been Resilience, the Dominick Cruz career story retrospective. Thank you very much, y'all. Peace out.